Welcome to the Thinking Abyss podcast, a philosophical journey through consciousness, reality, and the phenomena that challenge our understanding of existence. From ancient wisdom to cutting-edge theories, we explore where philosophy meets science and curiosity leads to the edge of the unknown.
Welcome back. We are getting into some of the biggest questions out there, that kind of puzzles that once they really get a hold of you, they can fundamentally change how you see everything. I mean, everything from your car to your own consciousness.
Today we're wrestling with the ultimate question of permanence. If you take something and you replace every single part of it, piece by piece, is it still the same thing when you're done?
It sounds so simple, right? Almost like a kid's riddle.
Exactly, but it's a dilemma so potent, it has challenged our entire understanding of what identity even is for millennia.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Our goal here is to really dissect the concept of identity itself, and we're going to use the most famous thought experiment in all of philosophy to do it, the Ship of Theseus paradox.
It's the ultimate test for what it means for something to continue existing. And to frame this right, you have to go back. Way back.
We're talking ancient Athens.
Ancient Athens, yeah, maybe as early as 400 BCE. The context here is just so important. The Athenians wanted to honor their legendary hero, their founder king, Theseus, the slayer of the Minotaur.
Right, and they did this by preserving his great ship, the actual vessel he sailed, and they kept it displayed right there in the harbor. It wasn't just, a bunch of wood. It was a powerful symbol.
A symbol of Athenian greatness, of their connection to their own history. And that act of preservation, that commitment to the monument, that's what sets the philosophical trap.
Because wood rots.
Wood rots, sails tear, everything decays. So to keep the ship looking like a ship and to maintain its symbolic power, the Athenians were meticulous. A rotten plank would be removed.
And replaced with a brand new, identical plank.
Exactly. And this just kept happening very slowly over centuries. Not all at once, just plank by plank, nail by nail, maybe a new mast every now and then.
Until eventually you get to a point where not a single atom of the original vessel is left. The ship floating in the harbor is made entirely of new replacement material.
And that's when the question hits you. And it's a really unsettling question. Is this ship, this new plank ship, is it still the legendary Ship of Theseus?
When you first hear that, I feel like your gut reaction goes one of two ways. For me, my first instinct is yes. Of course it is. It has the same shape. It's in the same place. It's serving the same purpose.
It has a continuous history.
A continuous history, exactly. It never stopped existing. It was just maintained. So for me, identity is about the story, the unbroken line.
But for a lot of other people, the intuition snaps right to the matter, to the stuff. How can it possibly be the same ship if the original wood, the actual planks that Theseus himself touched, are all gone?
Right. If identity is about the unique material that makes a thing, then this new ship it's a replica. It's a fraud, almost.
The objection is just so clean. If the original matter's gone, the original identity has to be gone too.
So the paradox isn't just asking us to pick one. It's forcing us to decide which property is more essential to identity itself. Is it the story or is it the stuff? And that's what we want to explore. Finding the essence of permanence in a world that's always, always changing.
What's so amazing about this puzzle is that it was already considered ancient when Plutarch wrote about it, around the 1st century CE. I mean, it was already a classic.
So for hundreds of years, people are just arguing back and forth, ship A, the one with the continuous history, versus this sort of hypothetical idea of the original matter.
Exactly. The argument was about a theoretical loss of matter, because the original planks were just, discarded. They were gone.
And then fast forward to the 17th century, and Thomas Hobbes comes along and decides he basically weaponizes the thought experiment.
That's a great way to put it. He introduces a twist that makes the paradox acute. It goes from being a curiosity to a full-blown contradiction.
Because he realized the weakness was that the original matter just vanished from the story.
Right. The Athenians didn't have another ship to point to, so Hobbes introduces this character, a meticulous observer, a kind of philosophical archivist.
The collector, the guy who's obsessed with original materials.
Precisely. And this collector, he follows the Athenians around. Every time they pull an old plank off the harbor ship, he scoops it up. Every nail, every piece of the rudder, he saves it and stores it away.
Okay, I can see where this is going. Over the centuries, he ends up with a warehouse full of all the original parts.
The entire original inventory of the Ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
And then comes the twist. The collector takes all that original matter, the wood Theseus stood on, the mast that caught the wind, and he reassembles a second ship.
Using the exact original design.
Exactly. So now, at the same moment in time, we have two physical ships. And both of them have a really compelling but totally mutually exclusive claim to being the real Ship of Theseus.
Okay, let's break down those claims. So we've got Ship A, the one still floating in the harbor.
Ship A's claim is all about history, location, and its social function. It has that unbroken line of existence. There was no single moment it was destroyed. It was just a smooth, gradual transition.
It's the official monument. Everyone calls it the Ship of Theseus.
Right. But its big weakness is it's 0% original matter.
Okay. Then we have Ship B, the one the collector reassembled.
Ship B's claim is all about the matter. It is the physical stuff of the original ship. If you care about the atoms, the actual physical configuration from 2,000 years ago, this one is the winner, hands down.
But its weakness is it has no continuous history. It was a pile of wood for centuries, and then, poof, it's a ship again. It broke that path through space and time.
And this is what's so masterful about Hobbes's twist. It forces you to see that you have these two competing ideas for identity continuity versus matter, and you simply can't have both. You have to pick one.
It's like a surgical tool, like the sources say. It just cuts right through our everyday mushy idea of what makes something itself.
Yeah, if identity were this single objective thing, the answer would be obvious. It would clearly be A or clearly be B. The fact that it's so hard to choose tells us that identity is a much more contested, much more complicated concept than we think.
And the implication is huge. If we can't even figure out which boat is the real one, how on earth are we supposed to figure out what makes you the same person from one day to the next?
Precisely. We have to take a step back and ask a more fundamental question. What are the different ways we can even ground the idea of identity? And which one of them, if any, can actually survive this kind of challenge?
So we've established that identity is what makes a thing that thing and not something else. But what's the basis for that? Is it the wood, the shape, the story? Yeah. Let's dig into the four main philosophical frameworks for this.
We should probably start with the one that feels most intuitive to a lot of people, the one that supports Ship B. It's called mereological essentialism.
That's a mouthful. It just means identity is based on the parts, right?
Yes, exactly. Mereology is just the study of parts and wholes. And the core argument is very direct. An object's identity is tied to the specific stuff, the matter that makes it up. Change the material, and you've destroyed the original object and created a new one.
So for the paradox, Ship B, the reassembled one with all the original bits, is the clear winner. No contest.
This feels really strong for, a statue or a rock. Things that don't change much.
Yeah, if I melt down a gold statue and recast it as a coin, it's not the same statue anymore, even if it's the same gold.
That's its strength. But this view fails, it fails catastrophically when you try to apply it to living things. To you, for example.
Because my body is in constant flux.
Your body is a biological process. You are constantly shedding atoms, taking in new ones. Cellular turnover means that, over a 7 to 10 year cycle, you're almost completely biologically replaced.
So if this view were true, then my wedding ring is the same object it's always been. And I'm a different person than I was this morning, just because of digestion and breathing.
Correct. The mereological view implies that you are a new person minute by minute. It's completely unsustainable for personal identity. It just doesn't work.
Okay, so that failure pushes us to look for identity in something non-material, something that can survive all that physical change. Which brings us to view number 2, spatiotemporal continuity.
This is the view that backs your initial intuition, the one that supports Ship A. It says identity is maintained by having an unbroken existence through space and time. The gradual replacement of parts doesn't break the identity because the ship never stops existing.
Just transforms in place.
Exactly. I'm the same person I was as a baby because there's an unbroken path from that baby to me right here, right now. The history is the identity.
This feels really intuitive for how things normally change, but it seems to have a problem with big interruptions.
It struggles profoundly when that continuity is ruptured. Think about this. What if you take a historical artifact, you completely disassemble it, put it in boxes for 20 years, and then you perfectly reassemble it in the exact same spot?
Well, according to this view, the path was broken, the chain was snapped, so the reassembled thing has to be a new object, a copy.
Exactly. Even with 100% original matter, the broken path means it loses its identity. And that's a huge limitation because, as we're going to see, modern technology is all about proposing exactly those kinds of radical leaps.
Okay, so if matter fails and a continuous path is too fragile, what about its job, its purpose? This takes us to view 3, functionalism.
Functionalism shifts the whole debate. It argues that identity is all about purpose, role, and function. The Ship of Theseus is whatever thing serves as the Athenian memorial. It doesn't matter what it's made of or if its history was gappy, the role is what persists.
This feels really practical. It lines up with how we think about legal or social identity. My laptop is my laptop because it does laptop things, not because of its specific atoms. So Ship A, the harbor ship, wins because it's still doing the job.
It's definitely powerful in those social and legal worlds where identity is often just a label of convenience, the VIN number on a car, the name of a corporation. But when you try to use it as a deep metaphysical definition, it can feel a bit thin.
Too superficial. What's the classic counter-argument here?
The standard one is the perfect duplicate. Let's say I have a one-of-a-kind painting, the Mona Lisa, and I create a perfect molecule-for-molecule replica that does the exact same function. It hangs in a museum, people admire it.
Is it the Mona Lisa? No. Intuitively, absolutely not. The identity of the original is tied up in its history, in Da Vinci's actual brushstrokes on that specific canvas. The function is irrelevant.
It just shows that for things we care about, things with sentimental or historical weight, function isn't enough. We need a deeper connection than that.
So we've looked at matter, history, and function, and none of them give us a consistent answer. This brings us to the most radical idea, the one that tries to solve the paradox by basically changing the rules of reality. View 4, four-dimensionalism.
This view asks us to stop thinking about objects as 3D things that move through time. Instead, it says objects are four-dimensional entities that are extended across both space and time. They're often called space-time worms.
A space-time worm. Okay, that's pretty abstract. You have to help me visualize this.
Yeah.
If I'm a space-time worm, what is the me that's talking right now?
The you that's talking right now is just a three-dimensional slice of a much larger, continuous four-dimensional you that stretches from your birth all the way to your death.
So my past self, my future self, they're all just different temporal parts of this one big worm that exists all at once in four dimensions.
Precisely. And if you think about the Ship of Theseus that way, the question which ship is the real one starts to lose its meaning.
How so?
Well, the original shipworm has temporal parts made of the original planks. Later on, it has temporal parts made of new planks. And the reassembled ship, Ship B, is just a different four-dimensional object that happens to share some of its temporal parts with the first one. We're not talking about sameness. We're just describing two different complex 4D objects that overlap.
I think I get the logic of it, but it requires me to abandon my most basic intuition, which is that I exist wholly and completely right now, in this moment. If I'm just a slice of some bigger worm, doesn't that sort of negate my experience of being present?
That is the single biggest critique of four-dimensionalism.
Yeah.
It is philosophically elegant. It's logically consistent. It neatly avoids the contradiction, but it is radically counterintuitive. It basically says our feeling of existing fully in the present is kind of a cognitive illusion.
So to solve the paradox of the ship, we have to sacrifice the common sense way we experience our own lives.
That's the trade-off. And if all these attempts to ground identity in the external world in matter, history, or even 4D reality lead to such deep problems, it kind of forces us to look for the answer somewhere else, inside the mind.
As we move from ships to people, this all gets so much more personal. We know that the identity is parts view fails because our bodies are always changing, so what, if anything, actually persists?
If it's not the atoms, then the continuity we feel, that persistence of me, must be based on something non-material. And historically, the first place philosophers looked was our own consciousness.
And the big name here is John Locke.
Right. The 17th century philosopher John Locke made this groundbreaking argument that personal identity is all about the continuity of consciousness, specifically memory. For Locke, you're not your body, you're not your soul, you are your memories.
That feels right. My memories are my unique story. They're the thread that connects who I am now to who I was yesterday.
It's a very persuasive idea. But it has a vulnerability right away, which is the problem of forgotten moments. If identity is memory, what about all the parts of your life you can't remember?
Like being a toddler. Or what I had for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago. If I can't remember it, was that a different person?
That's the problem. And Locke had to address it. He came up with a patch, which he called indirect continuity.
Okay, what does that mean?
He argued that you don't need a direct memory link to every single moment of your past. It's enough that you remember being the person who remember the earlier self.
Oh, like a chain of overlapping links.
Exactly. The adult you remember as being a 10-year-old, and that 10-year-old remember being a toddler. So even if you, the adult, can't directly remember being a toddler, the chain is still unbroken because the 10-year-old connects you both. The psychological path is maintained.
That's a clever fix, but there's still a big problem with it, isn't there? A philosopher came along and just completely shattered this whole system.
You're talking about Thomas Reid and his famous brave officer paradox. It's from the 18th century, and he uses a basic rule of logic to show why Locke's memory theory just can't be the whole story.
Yeah, walk us through this one. This is where it gets really mind-bending.
Okay, so Reid asks us to imagine 3 stages in one person's life. First, there's the boy. He's a kid, and he steals an apple from an orchard.
Okay.
Second, the officer. The boy grows up, he becomes a brave army officer, and crucially, as an officer, he clearly remembers stealing that apple as a boy.
Got it. And the third stage.
The general. The officer gets old, becomes a respected general. Now, the general perfectly remembers the brave deed he performed as the officer, but he has completely forgotten all about stealing that apple when he was a boy. The memory is gone.
Okay, so now we apply Locke's rule. Identity is memory.
Right. So by Locke's rule, the officer is the same person as the boy because he remembers the boy's action. There's the memory link.
Makes sense.
And the general is the same person as the officer because he remembers the officer's action. Another clear memory link.
Okay, that holds up so far. But here's the trap. Identity has to be transitive. If A equals B and B equals C, then A has to equal C.
Exactly. Logic demands that the general must be the same person as the boy. But, and this is the killer, according to Locke's own rule, the general has no memory of the boy's action. So, by Locke's definition, the general is not the same person as the boy.
Wait, so the theory leads to a situation where the general is both the same person as the boy and not the same person as the boy at the same time.
It's a logical contradiction. It collapses. Reid proved that while memory is obviously important for identity, it can't be the sole foundation. It just doesn't work logically.
So we're back to square one. Matter fails. A simple memory chain fails. It really is the same problem as the ship, just applied to the self. Nothing seems to persist without some kind of contradiction.
And this is the point where modern philosophy sort of embraced the failure. The philosopher Derek Parfit, in the late 20th century, basically suggested that maybe this whole search for a single, persistent self is the real mistake.
He offered a different way of looking at it.
He did. He shifted the focus from, am I the same person, yes or no, to a more flexible idea he called psychological continuity and connectedness.
Okay, what's the difference?
He argued that identity isn't some all-or-nothing thing. It's more like a network. What matters isn't some mysterious I that lasts forever, but the web of overlapping psychological connections, your memories, your beliefs, your personality traits, your desires.
So it's a matter of degree. I'm very strongly connected to the person I was yesterday, but much less connected to the person I was 30 years ago.
Exactly. And Parfit takes us to a really radical conclusion. He suggests that the persistent self we feel, the thing we're so desperate to find, might just be a useful fiction, a story we tell ourselves.
So what actually matters then?
What matters is psychological survival. If your memories and personality and values are preserved and continue on, that's survival. Whether they continue on in your original body or in a new body, or even split into 2 bodies, that's less important than the survival of the pattern itself.
That totally reframes the problem. We stop chasing this ghost of a singular self, and we start focusing on maintaining the psychological pattern. And that shift is absolutely essential for dealing with the kinds of challenges that technology is about to throw at us. The Ship of Theseus is not just an ancient puzzle anymore. It's becoming a blueprint for our technological future. The moment we can start digitizing a human mind, we are forced to make that choice Parfit talked about. What matters more, the matter or the pattern?
The classic modern example is the Star Trek transporter. It is a perfect high-speed ship of Theseus. Let's just break down how it's supposed to work first.
So I step onto the platform on Earth, a machine scans my body, atom by atom, records the entire pattern.
And then this is the crucial part. The original body is completely disassembled, atomized, destroyed. That pattern is then transmitted to, say, Mars, where a machine reconstructs a new body from new atoms based on that pattern.
And I step off on Mars feeling totally normal. I have all my memories. I feel like I've been conscious the whole time. But what actually just happened to me?
Well, if you're a strict materialist, if you believe in mereological essentialism, then the person on Earth was killed. And the person on Mars is a brand new, perfect copy. Teleportation isn't travel, it's a suicide machine that creates a twin.
That is a terrifying thought. Every time Captain Kirk beamed down, he was dying and being replaced by a clone.
That's the implication, if you prioritize the matter. But the paradox really gets sharp. It gets the Hobbesian twist when the machine malfunctions. What if the original body on Earth isn't destroyed?
Oh, wow. So now there are two of me, Earth me and Mars me, both with the same memories up to the moment I stepped into the machine.
And now you have a direct battle for the title of you. Earth you will claim identity based on material continuity. I'm the original. I have the unbroken physical path. That thing on Mars is just a copy.
But Mars you has just as strong a claim based on psychological continuity. I remember walking into that machine. My subjective experience is continuous. I feel like me. The fact that the original wasn't destroyed doesn't make my existence any less real.
It's a perfect contradiction. If you side with the Earth version, you're saying consciousness and memory don't really matter for identity. If you side with the Mars version, you're saying identity can branch, that the self isn't singular.
And this is exactly why Parfit would say we're asking the wrong question. It's not about which one is really you.
Right. Parfit would just say, congratulations, you've survived twice. The pattern has been successfully duplicated. Identity is split. We shouldn't get hung up on our old-fashioned, singular notion of self. We should just be glad the psychological pattern survived.
This logic leads us directly to the most extreme version of this problem. Mind uploading. The ship of the mind.
Yeah, we can map the two main ways people think about mind uploading directly onto the two halves of the original paradox.
Okay, so there's scenario one, sudden upload.
This is the teleporter model. You scan the brain all at once, destroy the original, and create a perfect digital simulation of it on a server. This is structurally identical to Ship E, a reassembled pattern with no physical continuity. Is that simulation you, or is it just a digital ghost that thinks it's you?
And then there's scenario two, gradual replacement. This is the pure Ship A model.
Right. Imagine, over the course of decades, we replace one of your brain's neurons with a tiny computer chip that performs the exact same function. Your consciousness is never interrupted. You don't even notice.
And we just keep doing that one by one, neuron by neuron, until my entire brain is synthetic.
At the end of that process, you are a machine, but your consciousness never blinked. The chain was never broken. That feels much more like survival, doesn't it?
It does. But am I still the same person?
And that forces the great modern debate. Substrate independence versus biological essentialism.
Substrate independence says consciousness is like software, and the brain is just the hardware it's currently running on.
Correct. If your mind is just a pattern of information processing, then the material it's made of, the substrate, shouldn't matter. Neurons, silicon chips, whatever. As long as the pattern is preserved, the identity is preserved. So the gradual replacement is still you.
But the other view, biological essentialism, would say no. It would argue that consciousness is tied to our specific, wet biological hardware, that there's something about neurons that can't be perfectly simulated.
Under that view, the person undergoing the gradual replacement might feel continuous, but the self actually died the moment the last biological neuron was swapped out. The continuous experience is just an illusion being passed along to an increasingly perfect machine.
And this isn't just sci-fi anymore. With companies making huge leaps in brain-computer interfaces, these are becoming real ethical and legal questions we're going to have to answer.
It's the Ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
But the ship is the very core of what it means to be human.
We've been talking about these huge abstract ideas, but once you get this lens, you really do start to see the paradox everywhere, in really mundane, everyday things.
Let's start with the most obvious one, the car.
Right. So you have a vintage car you love, and over 50 years you replace everything. The tires, the engine, the seats, pieces of the body. Nothing is original, but it looks and drives just like it always did.
Well, legally and socially, there's no question. It's the same car. It has the same vehicle identification number, the VIN, the same registration. Identity here is just decided by convention. We have a legal rule that privileges the documentation over the material.
But now let's do the Hobbesian twist on the car. Imagine a restorer collects all your old, rusty original parts and reassembles them in a museum.
So which one is the real car? The one in the museum is 100% original matter, but it has no legal identity. The one you're driving is 100% replacement parts, but it has the continuous history and the legal title.
And in that context, the answer depends entirely on why you're asking. For the DMV, it's my car. For a historical purist, the museum car is the real one. It just shows that different contexts demand different answers.
Let's move to something more abstract, like a collective identity. A band is a perfect example.
Yeah, think about a legendary rock band from the 70s. Over the decades, members leave, they pass away, they get replaced. Eventually, you get to a point where there are no original members left.
But they're still touring under the original name, playing the original songs, maybe even mimicking the original style. Is it the same band?
Fans argue about this all the time. Some will say absolutely not. Once the original members, the original matter, are gone, it's just a tribute act.
But other fans, who are more functionalists, say yes, of course it is. The identity of the band is in the brand, the music, the performance. It's an entity that's separate from the specific people in it at any one time.
It shows that for these collective identities, we often lean towards the functional definition, but there's still this emotional pull towards the original matter that we can't quite shake.
And that brings us to the most emotionally charged example of all, a long-term relationship.
A relationship is maybe the ultimate Ship of Theseus. It's made of two people who are themselves constantly being replaced and transformed.
Yeah, after decades together, not only have both partners' selves completely changed, but their beliefs, their habits, their personalities, they've changed too. The dynamic of the relationship itself has been continuously redefined.
The two people who first met are, in a very literal sense, gone. I'm sharing a life with the current version of the person I met 30 years ago.
And this is the emotional paradox. We maintain the identity of the person and the relationship, based almost entirely on shared history and the psychological continuity of our memories together. The relationship survives because we commit to integrating all that change into our definition of what sameness is.
It really illustrates that the definition of identity we use is directly tied to how much we care. We have this really flexible, forgiving concept of identity for the people we love, but we're much more rigid when we're talking about a plank of wood.
So we've spent all this time showing that none of these single theories of identity, not matter, not history, not function, can really hold up under pressure. They all lead to paradoxes or contradictions.
Which suggests that if every answer fails, maybe the question itself is the problem.
Exactly. The goal might not be to resolve the paradox, but to dissolve it. To stop trying to find the one true answer and start asking why the question is so tricky in the first place.
And this leads us back to the idea of conventionalism.
Right. This is the view that identity isn't some deep metaphysical fact about the universe. It's a practical linguistic tool we use. We just decide what counts as the same based on what's useful in a given context.
Like we saw with the car. For the tax office, identity is about the paperwork. For a collector, it's about the original metal. For a parent, identity is about the continuous story of their child.
We keep asking this one-size-fits-all question, is it the same thing? When we should be asking a much more specific question, like, is it the same for legal purposes or for sentimental purposes?
This sounds a lot like the philosopher Wittgenstein, who talked about us being bewitched by language.
It's a perfect fit. We have this single word, identity, so we assume it must refer to a single objective thing out there in the world.
When really it's just a label for a whole bunch of different related ideas.
Wittgenstein would say identity is a family resemblance concept. You look at members of a family and there isn't one single feature that every single person has. Instead, there's this complex web of overlapping similarities. One person has their mom's eyes, another has their mom's nose.
So identity isn't one thing. It's a network of criteria, matter, form, history, function. And we just emphasize the ones that are important for whatever we're doing at the moment.
Exactly. The paradox only feels like a paradox because we're trying to force all those different criteria to give us one single unified answer for the Ship of Theseus, and they're just not designed to do that. Once you accept that identity is context-dependent, the agonizing choice between Ship A and Ship B just kind of evaporates.
So dissolving the paradox leaves us with a few key lessons then.
I think so. The first one is that change is fundamental. Identity isn't about staying the same. It's about a pattern that persists through change.
Second, identity is conventional. We're the ones who draw the lines. We invent the VIN number or the band name to create a sense of continuity for our own practical and emotional reasons.
Third, context matters. The true identity of the ship depends entirely on whether you're a historian, a lawyer, or a philosopher.
And finally, maybe the most important one, attachment creates identity. We only get tangled up in these questions when we care about the thing. Our emotional investment in the story of Theseus, or in our own life story, is what makes us insist on a persistent identity in the first place.
The amazing thing is that you, the listener, you do this perfectly every single day without thinking about it. You drive your constantly changing car, you feel connected to your childhood self, you love a partner who is biologically a new person. You navigate these paradoxes intuitively.
The Athenians kept that ship in the harbor, not because they'd figured out the metaphysical answer, but because they knew that the connection to their past, to their hero's memory, that's what mattered.
The wisdom isn't in finding the single right answer. It's in understanding that identity is this flexible, multi-layered human thing that we shape to fit our needs, our memories, and our love.
I know that you are both the same person who started listening to this half an hour ago, and also someone who's changed just a little bit by thinking through these ideas. You are the Ship of Theseus, sailing forward, constantly replaced, but still uniquely you.
Which brings us to a final thought. If identity is just a pattern that persists through change, and everything about you is in flux, your atoms, your memories, your beliefs, what is the single most important part of you that you feel you have to maintain no matter what else changes? That your values, your memories, your goals for the future.
Something for you to anchor your own identity to. Thank you for joining us.
Until next time.